Hello everyone, my name is Moon and welcome back for more Umineko When They Cry, episode 8. So last episode, the destruction of the Golden Land, and Erica was fighting Beatrice as well. Honestly, it was pretty funny. So anyways, let us continue. Let's see what happens today. Lambda Delta and Burn Castle's fight to the death had passed through its phase as a dynamic clash of fireworks and was now a clash that was quiet and motionless. These two witches who possessed power on an entirely different level may have been truly equal in strength. The battle could only be resolved by mutual consent if one of them lost interest or found some reason for wanting to lose. Since both were putting their all into the fight without yielding a bit, they were absolutely and completely equal.
Lambda Delta、あんたが味方でよかったわ。
くそ、もう少しなんだ。早く砂になっちまえ。ふざけた魔法人め。
Butler got irritated and punched the magic circle, but there was nothing he could do except continue to watch over it. After all, the only way to dissolve it was by waiting. However, the pair of them still felt relief, if only a little. Lambda Delta really was strong. Even in a battle this spectacular, she fought on an even footing. No, if he considered how confident each side looked, she seemed to have a slight advantage in Butler's eyes. She would probably manage to buy them enough time. Angie would take the key and return to the Golden Land. They just had to endure a little bit longer. However, they had no way of knowing what Lambda Delta's fate would be after this. She had disobeyed the Senate, the highest level witches in existence. Something brutal probably awaited her. However, even knowing this, Angie had to step forward into the future without looking back. That was the single duty given to her, the Witch of the Future.
お兄ちゃん、あれは何？遥か向こうから何か近づいてくるわ。
まずいぞ。まさ。
Lambda Delta and Burn Castle were glaring at each other, so they didn't notice. Heading towards them from the distance were several emerald green glints. That light proved that they were enemies.
でも、ほんの数匹だけだわ。あの程度なら、ラムダデルタの敵じゃない。
All of the cats so far seemed like fish in a school, giving the impression that they'd be terrifying as a group, but not much of a problem by themselves. However, there was something different about the lights approaching them now. They were approaching in a beautiful ordered formation like constellation. Butler quickly realized that this was something new.
我が巫女よ。そろそろ鍵の準備が必要な時間ではなかったか？
Just by her tone, Butler was able to tell how great a witch this was. The black cats that surrounded her in a graceful and systematic constellation were all wearing large capes with elegant designs. It looked as though great overlords from many worlds had been transformed into cats, leaving only their capes untouched. What Butler imagined was quite true. That was exactly what had happened. These were the overlords from many worlds that formed Federine's personal guard. By the way, let me check this. Did it ever show human side? Not really. Okay. No, I was looking for for Hachijo's like human what do you call this? Information. I guess nothing. Their bodies took the form of cats merely as a sign of respect to their master who took the form of a human. These were entirely different from the pack of wild cats that served Burn Castle.
アウアウローラ。あら、もうそんな時間だったの？客を多少待たすのもまた、パーティーのもてなし方の一つではある。私はあまり好まぬのだがな。
As she said this, her eyes flicked to Lambda Delta. The latter bowed hurriedly. Though Lambda Delta grinned, she was also sweating, her brow furrowed with tension.
久しぶりであるな、ラムダデルタ卿。ご機嫌うるわしゅう。ダイアウローラ卿。ここは今日をもてなすにふさわしい場所ではない。会場への道を間違えられたか？ならば私が自らパーティー会場にご案内しよう。それは光栄ですわ、ダイアウローラ卿。
Federine Augustus Aurora, the legendary Great Witch. It is said that she surpassed the level of witches, becoming a creator, and that upon reaching this forbidden plane, she was cursed with a deadly ailment. However, in life, she once turned her pet cat into a witch. They say that this second witch wanders the sea of fragments endlessly, searching for any fragments that can revive her master from the pits of death called boredom, if only for a moment. And so the cat revived her master, revived the sacred witch who had reached heights none should reach. Just as witches look down at and mock humans from a higher world, calling them pieces on a game board, so she looks down at and mocks the realm of witches from an even higher world, calling them pieces on a game board. If a witch's strength is measured by the height of the world they are capable of reaching, then she was like a witch come back from the realm of the gods, one who had touched the highest forbidden heights and survived. Was there any chance of winning against her? No. Lambda Delta was unable to choose either victory or defeat by her own will.
我が巫女よ。友人と戯れるのは後にして、今は仕事をしてくれぬか。鍵の準備をせよ。わかったわ。途中でお使いを忘れてしまう天真爛漫さも猫の魅力である。そうは思わぬか、ラムダデルタ卿。
Lambda Delta didn't say anything but hung her head low. From this position, it seemed that the key's seal would dissolve at any second. However, Burn Castle would probably find Butler and Angie before that. Once they got their hands on the key, they could leave this place immediately. Of course, this was assuming that they did so before Burn Castle and Federine found them. Burn Castle mustn't be allowed to move from this spot.
ゲームセットね、ラムダ。私は大アウローラ卿の巫女よ。感激の魔女は朗読の巫女に保護を与えることを忘れてはいないわよね。
Lambda Delta still stood, slumped over without answering. The Witch of Theater Going gave protection to her reader Mikos. If Lambda Delta attacked Burn Castle, who was Aurora's Miko, Then the Great Witch Aurora would follow her contract, prevent what she considered an attack against herself, and respond accordingly.
取引しましょう。何をよ。バトラはどこに隠れてるの？素直に白状したら、すべて水に流してあげるわ。
奇跡の魔女のあんたが、バトラごとき小さな駒を恐れるの？
奇跡の魔女だからこそよ。あんな小石のような奴でも、起こす奇跡があることを、私は侮らないの。
その小石が、今じゃ奇跡の魔女に大出世したものね。
もう一度聞くわ。バトラはどこ？残念よ、ラムダ。それが返事のようね。
Bernkastel turned her back on Lambda Delta. Then she told her master that she was leaving to prepare the key, and she started swimming towards the key room. If I let her go any further, she'll find Butler and Ange. Butler readied himself. This time, it was his turn to become a sacrifice. Even though he was nothing more than a single pebble, he could still put out an eye. A candy firework exploded right in front of Bernkastel.
ラムダ、あんたは本当にバカだわ。
ラムダデルタ。
やっちゃったわ。バトラ、エンジェ。あとは頑張りなさいよ。
The cat overlords changed their formation, becoming a ferocious constellation that surrounded Federine. Then each drew the most terrifying of magic circles from their respective worlds and began to chant.
私は少し混乱している。我が巫女よ、そしてラムダデルタ教よ。これはどういう余興なのか。ラムダは私が鍵を取りに行くのを邪魔したいみたいよ。ほう、それはどういう意味なのか。
その意味がわかんないなら、フェザリーヌ、あんたちょっと酔っ払ってるんじゃない？酔いざましが必要なんじゃないかしら。
Lambda Delta bluffed as well as she could. Her fingertips were shaking slightly.
巫女への攻撃は主への攻撃とみなす。そなたも知らぬわけではあるまい。
知ってるわ。そのルールによると、私はあんたたちとやっぱり戦わなくちゃならないわけだわ。
ほう。私か私の巫女がそなたの巫女に失礼をしたか。ならば詫びよう。しかし教えてはくれぬか。今はそなたは巫女を持たぬはず。そなたにはいつの間に巫女がいたというのか。
それがね、いっぱいいるのよ。30人か40人くらい。もっといるかしら。このラムダデルタ、相手が誰だろうと巫女に売られた喧嘩は全部買い取っちゃうんだからね。そいつらはみんな絶対のハッピーエンドを信じてる。この絶対の魔女がそんな絶対を信じて頑張ってる連中をね、見捨てられるわけがないでしょ。
そなたの物語も嫌いではない。我が感激に値する。 しかし今の私は観劇者でなく出演者である。我が巫女の親友であることを知るから一度だけ忠告する。この舞台を降りるがよい。我が観覧席にそなたのための特別な席を設けさせよう。
あんたの物語と私が感激してる物語のどちらが面白いか考えているわ。
答えを聞こうぞ。
バトラたちの物語の方が100倍面白いわ。悪いけど今年の助演女優賞は私がもらっとくわ。あんたたち最後の人気投票は私に入れなさいよ。最低でもトップ5よ。いいわね。
どこ見て言ってんのよ。
As Lambda Delta pretended to joke around, she calmly focused on the one weak point she could see. If she had a chance for a single attack, then a 1 in a billion shot at victory existed. It was that horseshoe-shaped memory device floating around Federine's head. Okay, horseshoe? Without that, she couldn't preserve her own existence. Destroying it was impossible. But if Lambda Delta could just jar it enough, she might be able to make it bug out. At least once in the past, Federine's memory device had been damaged and her personality and appearance had changed. However, she was aware of that herself and probably wouldn't let that happen again no matter what.
よかろう、ラムダデルタ卿。そなたの脚本が準備できたならいつでも参られるがよい。
脚本なんて簡単よ。たった1行。華麗でキュートなラムダデルタ様が悪の黒幕アウアウローラを一撃でぶっ倒す。
愚かなラムダ。そこまであなたが愚かとは思わなかったわ。猫たちは手出し無用。ラムダデルタ卿より献上されるこの勇敢なる物語に対し、私自らが褒美を取らせよう。勇敢なるそなたにふさわしい物語と結末を褒美に取らせる。
フェザリーヌ・アウグストゥスアウアウローラ
Lambda Delta summoned magical power from her whole body and raised it in a mass above her head.
すまぬわ。
This is actually good. Look at this picture. Then the world time stopped.
そなたの脚本は採用しない。なぜなら
Rather than stopping or time stopping, it was more like flipping the pages of a book had stopped. In this motionless world, closely packed letters appeared.
この先の脚本を記すのは私であるからだ。
It was a tale that had been written up to this very moment. Federine Augustus Aurora. Lambda Delta summoned magical power from her whole body and raised it in a mass above her head. That was where the paragraph ended. In this frozen world, Federine sat with her arms crossed.
参ったものだ。戦いを書くのは久しぶりでな。唐突にこのような展開で筆を預けられても困るというもの。
When I get stuck writing, I try to write in reverse. In other words, instead of starting at the beginning, I start at the end and go backwards from there. That way, it's easier to set up foreshadowing and I can write the story with my vision for the end in the mind. The only downside is that I have to suddenly start at the climax without setting up the story first.
とりあえず戦いの顛末から遡って書いていこう。ラムダデルタ卿、そなたは私に敗れ生き絶える。
As Featherine said, these words were added to the massive group of letters that filled the frozen world. However, she was starting from the end, so there was a large gap between the new words and the old ones.
どんな姿でそなたは破れるのであろうな。そなたの勇敢さにふさわしい勇壮な最後が良いだろう。こうはどうか。よくわからぬが、何かに吹き飛ばされて本棚に叩きつけられ、獅子がバラバラに砕け散り、息絶えて暗闇に墜落して消える。なかなか派手な最後であるな。よし、これでとりあえずそなたの最後は決まった。
The blanks in the outline Featherine spoke were being filled up. At the same time, a Lambda Delta figure was wiped out. After crossing her arms and thinking again, Featherine pointed in a random direction. Lambda Delta appeared, blasted away by something, and slammed, spread-eagled against a bookshelf Featherine had pointed at.
さて、ここからこのような最後に至るまでの激しい戦いを執筆せねばならぬのだが、今の私は今日も見抜く通り少々酔いが回っている。その部分は今度改めて時間を設けてじっくりと執筆することにする。今はこれにて許せ。きっとそなたに気に入ってもらえる勇敢な戦いぶりを執筆することを約束しようぞ。
Featherine snapped her fingers. Lambda Delta had no idea what was going on. Before she could even blink, she was suddenly here, being slammed against a bookshelf.
何よ、これ。
She couldn't comprehend the something that Featherine had killed her with. However, that was only natural. After all, Featherine herself hadn't decided what the something was. However, Lambda Delta did understand one thing. That she was already dead. Streams of blood dripped from the corner of her mouth. Then lines of blood appeared on her wrists and ankles, her elbows and knees. She looked like a marionette doll herself.
私、何に殺されたの。
まったくだ、ラムダデルタ卿。良いアイデアがあったら聞かせてほしいぞ。
この化け物。
Still pinned against the bookshelf, Lambda Delta let her head slump. Her wrists, ankles, legs, arms, and neck each split into a separate part, and the marionette shape like her lost its strings, falling in pieces into the depths below. Nothing remained. It was all swallowed up by the darkness beneath them.
化け物とは、私を称える褒め言葉の一つであるな。
ラムダデルタ。
エンジェ、見るな。お前は見るな。
Shedding frustrated tears, Angie closed her eyes tight. She must not look. The Witch of the Future must not accept Lambda Delta's defeat.
あいつはくたばってなんかいない。ただ勇敢だった。
わかってるわ。あのラムダデルタが負けるはずない。
At the moment, there was a slight sound, and the golden key that hung in the air shook. The seal had finally broken. Butler grabbed at it immediately. However, at exactly the same moment, a magical tremor appeared throughout the vast key room.
何？
The tremor seemed to have shaken something inside my pocket. I stuck my hand in and found that the fragment Lambda Delta had given us to return to the Golden Land had shattered.
くそ、ラムダにもらったかけらが。
惜しかったわね。もう逃げ場はないわよ。ベルカステル。ラムダがもう少し賢く立ち回っていたら、もう5秒は稼げていたかもね。そうしたらあんたたちはその鍵を手に黄金鏡に逃げ帰れていた。ラムダが主がバカだとミコも苦労するわね。ほう。
Featherine quietly showed her surprise. To really surprise her was no easy task. Oh! Damn, look at this, he punched her. She's bleeding. The Witch of Miracles, who boasted that no one could even step on her shadow unless she wished it, fell. After taking Butler's right fist to her face, she fell. Deserved. Berncastle's body immediately split into dust and reconstructed itself in front of Butler, as though nothing had happened. However, she was holding her cheek. She couldn't undo the fact that she had been hit. For the first time in 100 years, she had let someone tread on her shadow without her consent. Her face was gradually filled with shock. And Butler's? It couldn't be seen. His outstretched right arm was blocking it, so his expression couldn't be seen.
Naniを?
She didn't let the next strike hit her. Berncastle vanished like the mist, then reappeared a short distance away. However, Butler only missed by a hair's breadth. Not because she had intentionally made that happen, but for real. Finally, she truly began to feel the pain of being punched in the face. For too many years, she had forgotten the concept of pain. Very slowly, it was coming back to her. Berncastle writhed in anguish, holding her cheek. That feeling of forgotten for centuries seems to be hitting home hard. Butler looked at her face. Their eyes met. Once again, Berncastle remembered the emotion she had forgotten for hundreds of years.
痛いか。俺の仲間を愚弄するお前の言葉の痛みはそれを超える。
And then she shuddered. What Butler saw before his eyes was Burnt Castle shuddering for the first time in centuries. To Burnt Castle's eyes, it hadn't even looked like Butler rushing at her and punching. It was as though she had been sucked towards where he stood with his furious fist raised. When her eyes opened wide in terror, Butler's massive fist had been all that she could see. Of course, he wasn't capable of hitting her. Burnt Castle was just like a shadow. True, trying to hit Burn was like enviously trying to hit the reflection of the moon on water with a stone. No matter how often you hit it, you can never smash the moon's reflection. However, Butler hit, and again, over and over, to prevent the moon from showing on the water's surface again. A fiercely thrown pebble sent ripples across the water's surface. It broke through the moon's reflection, broke through the water's surface itself, leaving even the bottom of the pond bare, breaking through everything. His certain willpower broke through to a miracle. It's over? A backward kick that Butler shot out without even looking behind him, bullet through empty space. In that space, Burnt Castle reappeared with a foot in her gut.
俺たちの勇敢な仲間を愚弄する言葉を。
The Witch of Miracles fell. For the second time, she fell. Once, it would have been a miracle. Things that happen more than once aren't miracles anymore. Burnt Castle understood. Butler was capable of hitting her. Then she fell, was slammed against the floor, got up on her hands and knees and vomited. She threw up violently over and over. Her face was covered with pain and vomit and tears and snot. Then she looked up at Butler with a furious expression and howled. And she wasn't howling at Butler.
Mikoがやられてるのよ。何を見てるのよ。やっつけなさいよ。すまぬが、私はラムダデルタ教の最後を記すので忙しい。私は手を貸せぬのでな。お前たちが少し助けてやるとよい。
Federine's guard, the cat overlords, now formed a different constellation. Then each drew a magic circle and began chatting, or chanting.
この猫たちね、それぞれがみんなあんたのようなゲームの主人公の慣れの果て。どいつもこいつもそれぞれの勇壮な物語で主人公を務め、その勇敢なる物語に名誉を授けられ、アウローラの警護を許された。それぞれがね、国やら星やら宇宙やらの存亡をかけて戦ってきたのよ。あんたはせいぜい妹やら妄想の魔女やらとのゲームごっこがせいぜいじゃない。 主人公の格が違うのよ。食らってくたばりなさい。ぶち込んでやれゲロカス様。
There are many spectacular magical spells depicted the beginning of a universe, the creation of planets, their destruction, and the universe's end all in an instant. After that, not a speck of dust should have remained. However, when the smoke cleared, there was a person standing there. It stood there with its hands in its pockets and its head hanging quietly. Its face was in shadows and couldn't be seen.
お兄ちゃん。何よこれ。
Butler seemed to be completely uninjured. Not only were his clothes not burned, but his hair hadn't even been disturbed.
何よこれ。バカ猫たち全然聞いてないじゃない。
The cat overlords silently shook their heads, sending a short report to their master.
エンドレスナイン。なんですって。彼らの物語は誰にも邪魔できぬらしい。
So what is Endless Nine?
すまぬな我が巫女よ。どうやら猫たちにもお手上げのようだ。何が各界の魔王たちよ。あんたたちだってかつてはどこかのゲーム版の主人公だったんでしょ。それがこのざま。恥を知りなさいよ。
The cats, they knew. From the very beginning, they had known that they wouldn't be able to do anything with him as the main character of this game board.
我が巫女よ。ゲーム版にて物語を紡ぐのはゲームマスターのみに許された特権である。それを主張された以上、私も物書きの端くれとしてそれを尊重せぬわけにはいかぬ。私は感激の立場に戻ろうぞ。役立たず主。バトラよ。我が巫女がそなたの仲間を愚弄したことを謝ろう。そしてそなたのゲームを紡ぐ権利がゲームマスターであるそなたにあることも理解した。そなたの物語はそなたが紡ぐ。それもよかろう。だが我が巫女も今はそなたのゲームのゲームマスターでな。二人が同時にゲーム版を広げたらしい。一つのゲームに二人のマスターとはめったにないことだが、私はこの奇跡を喜んでいる。なぜならそなたたちの最後のゲームにふさわしいものになると確信したからだ。
立てよ、ベルンカステル。
なるほどね。ゲームマスター同士が戦うならそのゲームに乗っ取るべきだって言いたいのね。最初からそうだと言えばいいのに。
Burn Castle slowly got to her feet and made her body melt away like mist. Then she appeared in the air once again, facing Butler.
いいわ。あんたのゲーム版のルールで戦ってあげるわ。ただ私はあんたたちほど悠長じゃないから、短期にそして圧倒的に出題して瞬時に終わらせてしまうわよ。私のお相手は誰？二人がかりでも一向に構わないわよ。 お兄ちゃん、私も戦うわ。
来るな。
どうして？
お前はそこで見ているんだ。そして今度こそ
お兄ちゃん。それでいい？アウローラ。私が立ち会い人となろうぞ。我が巫女を打ち破れたなら、そなたらを黄金鏡へ送り返すことを約束しよう。黄金鏡がまだ残っていればの話だけれどね。
俺は
そうよ、ベアトやみんなが負けるはずがない。
Okay, it went silent though, the music.
なら強砲は早い方がいいわね。
Okay.
エリカ、報告を許すわ。
Oh, Erica is here now.
いらっしゃい。
When Burnt Castle snapped her fingers, Erica appeared with a bow.
お取り込み中、失礼いたします、我が主。
Okay, Miss Little Rat has arrived.
悪かったわね、エリカ。あなたがせっかく朗報を持ち帰ってきてくれたのに、待たせてしまって。はい。お喜びください、我が主。黄金鏡が消滅しましたことをご報告申し上げます。嘘だわ！黄金鏡は完全に崩壊。瓦解し、その全てが虚無の海に沈んだことをご報告申し上げます。人間は愚か、幻想の住人に至るまで、その全ては消滅いたしました。嘘よ！私は信じない！なら、信じさせてご覧に入れましょう。我が主、これを。
Erica humbly presented an object wrapped in cloth. It shone with a golden light.
何かしら？黄金のリンゴかしら？黄金鏡の主、ベアトリーチェの心臓にございます。
Oh. So Beato has been defeated. Okay, so I guess with that, we'll take a break. But honestly, like these ending parts, I guess, not ending technically, but I guess we're close to the end. It's been fun. Aurora was there. She brought her stuff. And it was pretty cool. Like, it was nice. It was nice. No joke. And then Butler punching Burnt Castle here. It was pretty funny. Yes, pretty funny. So let's see. Let's see what happens next time, right? So we're gonna continue this and do more of Umineko When They Cry, episode number 8 in the next one. So I'll just see you then. Bye bye.